Pro wrestling is known for some surprising moments. Some are scripted, but sometimes things get a little too real. In this video, we're going to count down 10 shocking moments in wrestling history. I'm going to warn you, we will start off pretty light, but as the list goes on, it's going to get more disturbing. Number 10, the Radicals show up on Raw. During the Monday Night Wars, many of the WWE's talents were lured away to WCW because of the power of Ted Turner's checkbook. The WWE saw the losses of Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Jeff Jarrett, Bret Hart, X-Pac, and others. But on January 31st of 2000, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, and Eddie Guerrero showed up on Monday Night Raw. During a tag team match between the New Age Outlaws and Al Snow and Steve Blackman, the Radicals crossed the barricade and attacked the Outlaws. After the attack, they made their way up the ramp as the newest members of the roster. These wrestlers have stated before that in WCW it was impossible to go up the cart, as the main eventers would not let other stars shine. This was a big loss as these were the core of the cruiserweight division, and the true workhorses of the WCW at the time. And because of this, no one ever suspected that they would ever leave the WCW. Number 9, Vince buys WCW. In the 2000s, several potential buyers for WCW were rumored to show an interest in the company. Ted Turner, however, did not hold any influence over Time Warner before the final merger of America Online. Eric Bischoff was even working with Fusion Media Ventures. They wanted to make a bid to acquire the company in January of 2001. One of the primary backers in the WCW deal backed out after AOL Time Warner refused to allow WCW to continue airing on their networks, leaving Fusion Media to take the offer off the table. AOL deemed wrestling to be out of line with its image, and thought it would be very hard to get advertisers across a wrestling program. So just like that, they wanted WCW off the air. With no TV deal, Fusion Media wanted nothing to do with the wrestling company. They were looking for those original TBS and TNT time slots. This allowed the WWE and Vince McMahon to come in and purchase WCW and their video library. With this one purchase, the wrestling landscape would be changed forever. Number 8, Hogan joins the NWO. During the 1980s, Hogan was the biggest name in professional wrestling. He was the babyface of all babyfaces. Now, Hogan did spend a short period of time as a heel in the Minneapolis-based AWA, but it didn't take him long to get over with the audiences. He spent the remaining time in the AWA as a face, then in the WWE as the biggest face in the world. He spent years telling kids to say their prayers and eat their vitamins. When Hall and Nash showed up in the WCW, Hogan was asked to be the third man and the leader of the NWO. Supposedly, the Hulkster was really on the fence about this. Eric Bischoff did not think he was going to go through with the heel turn, so he asked Sting if he would do it in case Hogan had chickened out. Hogan did go through with it, and the whole wrestling world was completely shocked. This was like watching Superman, the straight-laced hero, turn into a supervillain. Bischoff and Hogan were generally worried that the audience was going to riot. Luckily, things did not go that far. They did fill the ring with garbage, and some poor guy jumped in the ring because he decided that he was going to make Hulk pay for his heel turn. Number 7, Brian Pillman pulls a gun. Austin and Brian Pillman had a long rivalry going back to their days together in WCW, when they wrestled together as the Hollywood Blondes. When Pillman joined the WWE, he entered into a rivalry with Stone Cold, and this led to a segment where Brian Pillman was supposed to give an interview from home. It was during Kelly's sit-down with Brian Pillman and his wife Melina that Vince McMahon interjected to inform them that Austin was circling the neighborhood, which prompted Pillman to offer the infamous line, "When Austin 316 meets Pillman 9mm Glock, I'm going to blast his ass straight to hell." Austin was then seen attacking Pillman's friends outside, and eventually smashed his way in through the back door only to be confronted by Brian Pillman pointing a gun straight at him before the satellite feed conveniently shut off. Number 6, the Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart had been the new face of the company after Hulk Hogan had left the WWE due to the steroid trials. Vince had decided to focus on smaller wrestlers, so Bret, with his smaller frame and his incredible in-ring ability, was the future of the WWE. The only problem? The WCW had gone looking to poach Bret from the WWE. Vince at first had agreed to keep Bret and pay him more money. He then decided that he could not afford the new demands and that he should take the deal from WCW. Hart, who was the champ at the time, was supposed to drop the belt on the way out of the company, but refused to drop the belt in Canada to Shawn Michaels. And due to former WWE Women's Champ Sunny showing up in WCW with the belt and throwing it in the trash, Vince did not want something similar to happen. So during the match, he came out and called for the bell. He then took the belt and gave it to Shawn Michaels. But before leaving, Bret gave Vince McMahon one final going away gift. Number 5, Mankind in Hell in a Cell. This is one of those moments that if you watched live, you will never forget. Mick Foley really showcased the lack of care he had for himself and for his body during this match. The moment he was thrown from the Hell in the Cell, I remember thinking that Mick Foley was dead. An audience has never seen anything like this at the time. When Mick Foley got off the stretcher and actually went back to finish the Hell in the Cell match, I could not believe that he could even walk back to the ring. Nowadays we see these types of bumps more and more, but back then, this was truly earth-shattering. He even made his way back to the cell where he was chokeslammed through the top of the cell. I remember Mick saying that there was a piece of tooth in his lip or in his nose. If you have not seen this match, do not sleep on it. It is one of the best matches you can watch. Number 4, Jerry Lawler slaps Andy Kaufman on the David Letterman Show. Andy Kaufman was an actor and a comedian that loved wrestling. He would wrestle women and called himself the intergender champion. The Memphis promotion would eventually allow him to work down there in their promotion, where he became a quick heel. He was incredibly dedicated to kayfabe, so when he and Jerry the King Lawler were to discuss the upcoming match on the Letterman Show, he and Lawler came up with the idea that he would slap Kaufman on the TV show. The world thought what they were witnessing was real, and both did a good job at this angle. The slap was real, and boy, you could hear it, but there was no bad blood between the two. But back in those days, you kept kayfabe no matter what. David Letterman even told Jerry Lawler that that slap was what put his show on the map. It truly shocked the world, and audiences tuned in to see what would happen on his show next. Number 3, the death of Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. When Eddie was in a match, he could make anyone he worked with look like a star. He could also tell a story in the ring like no one else. He was one of the workhorses of the WCW, and helped beat the WWE in the ratings for 83 weeks. Eddie did struggle with addiction, but it shocked not just the wrestling community, but the whole world when Eddie died of heart disease at such a young age. He was only 38. No one would have expected someone in the prime of their life who accomplished so much to pass away so suddenly. He actually did die in my hometown, so I remember hearing about this. It was in every newspaper, on every channel. He had just performed the night before at the Target Center. Rest in peace, Eddie, you were gone way too soon. Number 2, the mass transit incident. For an ECW show, Axl Rotten had been scheduled to work a tag team match with Devon Dudley against the Gangstas, which was New Jack and Mustafa. But he couldn't make it due to a family emergency. The show was also scheduled to feature dwarf wrestlers Tiny the Terrible and Half Nelson against a 17-year-old Eric Koulas. He performed as Mass Transit, which was a bus driver gimmick. Koulas convinced ECW owner and booker Paul Heyman to have him fill in for Rotten by claiming he was 21 years old and had wrestled for Killer Kowalski, who was a former wrestler who actually trained Triple H. Heyman said later that he did not know Koulas' age. Before the match, Koulas asked New Jack to blade him since he had never done it himself before, and man, what a dumb idea that was. New Jack, of course, agreed. During the match, Devon Dudley and New Jack brawled outside the ring, while Mustafa and Transit fought inside the ring. The match was booked as a squash match, with Dudley quickly isolated outside the ring and told not to return by the Gangstas. The Gangstas then double-teamed Koulas inside the ring, with New Jack pummeling him with crutches, toasters, and various other objects in the hardcore wrestling style that ECW was known for. At the end of the match, New Jack bladed Koulas with a surgical scalpel, as the two had agreed, but cut way too deep and severed 2 arteries in Koulas' forehead. The event was a house show and luckily wasn't televised, but a fan with a camcorder caught the footage, which was eventually used as evidence in the legal proceedings. The video showed New Jack quietly asking Koulas after the blading, "Are you alright?" Next, the Gangstas proceeded to work Koulas over even more with elbow drops and various objects. He eventually passed out from all the blood that he had lost. As medics rushed the ring, New Jack grabbed a mic, and he claims he was trying to get heat, but he grabs the mic and he says, "I don't care if this mother effer dies, he's white. I don't like white people. I don't like people from Boston. I'm the wrong person to mess with." And according to an interview with New Jack in an interview with RF Video, he supposedly told Kulas this is not a good idea prior to the match. Number 1. The death of Owen Hart. On May 23, 1999, Hart fell to his death in Kansas City, Missouri, during the Over the Edge pay-per-view. Hart was in the process of being lowered via harness and grapple line to the ring from the rafters of the Kemper Arena for a booked Intercontinental Championship match against the Godfather. In keeping with the Blazers' new buffoonish superhero character, he was to begin with a dramatic entrance being lowered to just above the ring level, at which he would act entangled and then release himself from the safety harness and fall flat on his face for a comedic effect. This necessitated the use of a quick release mechanism. It was an elaboration on a Blue Blazer stunt done previously on the Sunday Night Heat before Survivor Series in 1998. While being lowered into the ring, Hart fell 78 feet, landing chest first on the rope, throwing him into the ring. Hart had performed this stunt only a few times before. Hart's widow Martha had suggested that by moving around to get comfortable with both the harness and his cape, Hart unintentionally triggered an early release. Television viewers did not see the incident. During the fall, a pre-tape vignette was being shown on the pay-per-view broadcast as well as on the monitors in the darkened arena. Afterward, while Hart was being worked on by the medical professionals inside the ring, the live events broadcast showed only the audience. Meanwhile, the WWE television announcer Jim Ross reportedly told those watching live on pay-per-view that what had just transpired was not a wrestling angle or a storyline, and that Hart was hurt badly, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. Hart was transported to Truman Medical Center in Kansas City. While several attempts to revive him were made, he died due to his injuries. The cause of death was later revealed to be internal bleeding from blunt force trauma. He was only 34 years old. Rest in peace, Owen. I want to thank everyone for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if there was any shocking moments that I missed or what you guys think the most shocking moments in wrestling history were. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my socials in the description. Stay safe and stay healthy. Keep enjoying wrestling. We'll see you on the next one.